Hello, it is on this day, July 21st, 2022, that I finished Caliban's War at last. I am so sorry. I'm sorry. And I'm particularly sorry towards myself because I know I could have finished this a long time ago. Like a long time ago. I was prepared to finish this a long time ago, and the excuse that is kind of true, but still an excuse, is that I've gotten a full-time job and I've been doing financial training. And honestly, it's not even the full-time job. I could have been reading with a full-time job. It's the financial training that's been really killing my want to read at all. Like my want to read across the board has just been killed from reading a bunch of legalese all the time. Because that is really boring and it spawns a lot of headaches. And so I stopped reading. And I feel really bad now. I am behind in every single way I could be behind, not just in my books, not just in the fact that it took me forever to do this, not in the fact that it's taken me a month and a half to 2 months to upload a video, but also in the fact that I had a project for this YouTube channel that I was supposed to have done yesterday that I haven't even started. And I feel really bad. I was so excited to do that, and I've had it written on that whiteboard right there for like 3 months now. And I didn't even start it. Like yesterday, middle of the day, I remembered, and I felt terrible. And I still feel terrible. I'm not exactly going to explain what it is, because it will be out hopefully in a week. I'm going to dedicate all my energy after finishing this book to doing that before I start the next book. We'll talk about that more at the end. But I feel bad. I'm very much behind. If I want to reach my book goal, I have a lot of reading to do. If I want to reach the book goal before the end of the year, I need to be able to catch up on Sanderson before the end of the year. Don't know if I'll even be able to accomplish that. So I feel really bad. That's it. I feel really bad. And I have a lot of catching up to do. So there will be a lot more reading in the future. This will not happen again for a while. At least until the school year starts. And then we'll figure out how the school year is going. That will be a whole other thing. But right now, I definitely have the time and energy to amend this. So I will. With that said, non-spoilers. We're talking about Caliban's War. We're not talking about my lack of reading. This book, Book 2 of The Expanse, by James S. A. Corey, is fantastic. Okay. So, you remember my first video, Leviathan Wakes. Same author, same book 1 of the series. Space fighting. Caliban's War? Space politics. We got space politics. I am all for this. Like that might not be the fact that other people get excited about, but I am loving the space politics. I can't even begin. Loving space politics. It is fantastic. I'm loving it so much. And also space fighting. We still got space fighting. We got 5 levels up space fighting. Like this book basically took Leviathan Wakes and just went a completely different level with it in a different category. If that makes sense, it's not necessarily that it's a step up from Leviathan Wakes, it's that it's a step aside from Leviathan Wakes. Like, Leviathan Wakes had that really sudden violence that I got really excited about, like the sudden violence and the sudden reveals and the horror hitting you in the face. That was book 1. Book 2 decided very creepy prologue. Just like the first one. The prologues were similar. And then it decided to show you how freaking beautiful space is and what it's like to see Jupiter engulf the sun on an icy moon, which so much envy. The James Webb Telescope photos just came out recently, and of course me, that's the industry I'm hoping to go into, I've been freaking out. It's so freaking cool. and I'm reading space sci-fi at the same time, and it is fantastic, and I love space. I love space so much. Oh my goodness. Space. That was really cool. And that was even before the plot began. Okay, the plot began in that same chapter. The true plot began in that same chapter. And see, you can't compare the fighting to the fight in book 1 because it basically took the thing we're fighting against and just decided, you know what, let's give it like 12 level ups. Let's give it like 12 level ups. That's like your DM for D&D, like having like one like measly kobold and then deciding, oh, that was very weak. Here, how about we take this kobold, we make him a level 20 wizard with also 10 levels of warlock. I know that's not even like in the rules, but we'll homebrew it. And also has a pet dragon and like god dragon. But 12 level ups. Just decided, let's take this thing that they were fighting against. Let's just make it a completely different thing. That was like in the first 3 chapters of this book. The first 3 chapters. And we had a new thing we were fighting that is like 12 times more powerful than anything we saw in the first book. At the start. That's a way to start a book, okay? That's a way to start a book. Way to start a book. And then right after that, we get into politics. Not even more fighting. We go from fighting to running away to politics. And it was done well. And I am all for it all day long. I am all for it. Like, you would think that that's one of those things that annoys me, but I am all for it. Give me the fight scenes, give me like the really intense like horror things, and then just chuck some politics at me. I'll take it. I'm a big fan. I really liked how it was done, and I think the balance was really good, especially later on when things came together. This book is just different from the first book. Same world or same solar system, same like idea, the same build, but at the same time, it's just different, and I really like it. I really like it. And the thing about this book, while the first book had those like sudden violent moments, this book, while it did have sudden violent moments, had a lot of its sudden plot points just be in a different vein. And maybe they didn't feel as strong, but they were just as significant to what is happening that it still felt right. I have a specific one I'm thinking of, but yeah, like, the pacing of this book was actually really, really, really good. Even if I stopped in the middle of it for a long time, like, I'm still able to think about the book as a whole, and it seems like everything flows together really, really well. And so, I think it's just really good. And the ending, the last few chapters, like, when I say the last few chapters, I mean, like, the last 10 chapters. It's pretty good. It's very interesting. Like, the way that things, I feel like, okay, I know I'm, like, this is, like, peak ramble. I'm sorry. I'm in peak ramble right now. Towards the end, like, the end of the plots in this series, it basically turned you around in a 180 turn, and then turned you in another 180 turn, and then turned you in another 180 turn. And that's what's really interesting when you think back on the book after you finished it, is like, there was a lot of plot that just spun you in circles at the end, and it still makes sense. Even though it kind of just spun in circles for a little bit. It was like, oh, this can happen, this can happen, this can happen, and then cue politics, and then this can happen, this can happen, and then cue politics, and it goes back to the first 3 things again, and you're just like, politics? Politics is so confusing. I think it was well done. In the first video, I mentioned how there were no characters that really stood out to me, and that's not common for me. I'm a very character-loving based reader. most of the series on this bookshelf, I can list you all the characters I freaking love that I've read. This series, I say there still isn't a character that I love. There are characters that I like and I want to see more, and I'm starting to love, but not yet. Nobody's really standing out to me. Aversarla's the one standing out the most, and that's because she's funny as all hell. She brings the very crazy 180 politics. And I honestly just really like her husband. It doesn't really have much to do with Aversarla, but she's the character I like the most, and she's just very confusing but complex in her own way, and it's fascinating to see how everyone interacts with her. She's kind of throwing a wrench in everything. Everything. And I think that's why I like her. So, if I were to have a favorite, it'd probably be Aversarla. No idea if I'm saying that right. I don't do audiobooks. I'm reading the physical books. But she's probably my favorite. But if we, like, compare this to other series that I read, it's not like I'm, like, attached to any of the characters. I really am not. And I think it's really fascinating that that's how things have been going. But it's perfectly fine. I mean, I am fully enjoying myself. So I think it's very interesting to have that. What's the last thing I do in these non-spoiler things? I don't even remember. This book is very weird in its own way. The first half is similar to the first book. Just 12 levels up, but, you know, somewhat similar to the first book, just 12 levels up. And then the middle happens, and you're just like, oh, it's 13 levels up. And then the end happens, you're like, okay, we're like 20 levels up. And then the actual end happens, and you're just like, okay. There's 7 more books in this series, and that just happened. What is next? Let's just say the end of this book has you completely lost on what the next step is, because honestly, I would have given up. I would have given up. I would have given up at this point. Retired. Given up. And this is book 2 out of 9, so I am really excited to see what's next. That's the end of my non-spoilers. It was very rambly and very much not put together. My apologies. But the general idea is very different from the first book in its own way. Politics. The fighting just decides to scale up a frick ton. We meet brand new characters for the most part. Like, pretty much brand new characters. Including a really funny character. That is the one I like the most. And the plot just scales and scales and scales until at the very end you're just like, what even anymore? What even anymore? There's 7 more books. I don't know where this is going, but I am very excited to see where it goes. Alright. Spoilers, which I'm mostly just going to be rambling about the things that took me by surprise. This is your time to leave. Spoilers. Spoilers? Spoilers. I need some ice cream after this, man. Hi. I yelled no several times when I finished the book. And I it was like that sink in the chair. No! That was me. Because this was one of those books that decided to have a really, really mean ending. And I can't read the next book for a week, which we're going to talk about at the end. So I am salty at the ending, but Miller? 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 Miller. That's the last line of the book! Like, it's like pretty much the last line. Hey, Detective Miller said, we gotta talk. You can't do that to me. I can't start the next book for a week. Maybe even 2 weeks. What is happening? Does that mean that he's like working with the proto-molecule? Is the proto-molecule in him? He had the blue firefly thing? The proto-molecule had blue eyes? I mean, should he be there? What is he gonna do? Is he gonna be like, I know what's happening? Or like, I've been talking to Venus and blah, blah, blah. How did he get off Venus? Where did he even come from? Is he real? Is he real? Period. I have no idea where to go with that. I'm not even gonna try. This is like the end of the last Mistborn Era 2 book where I was like, I don't even know where to begin to go with that reveal. I'm just gonna not. I'm just gonna mention it and just be like, that happened, and I'm really upset I can't read the next book yet. Set it aside. I will admit, several times when I was reading this book, I actually pulled out Leviathan Wakes and reread things, especially when we found out that the Razorback was on the really fancy, like, rich Mao ship that Aversarla was put on. The Razorback. Julie Mao ship that Miller was like, oh, I hope you can keep that. Like when he was doing investigations and stuff, that ship was kept on this very rich, fancy Mao ship that he wasn't even using. Like, he was supposed to be on, but then he got off it. And I wonder why. So that's why I went back and I reread the book. And basically, they were talking about selling it and said that it was sitting in a garage dusty. And then told Julie to come back. Well, it looks to me that in Caliban's War, it was not sitting in a garage dusty. Were they lying? Why were they lying? Yes, they wanted Julie Mao back. Yes, they were leading all this stuff to happening. Yes, he's part of the reason why some of this stuff happened. But why lie in that way? Were you going to use the Razorback for something? I'm in the middle of a video. Sorry about that. I had to go do something, and honestly, I have no idea where I left off. Remembering is probably not going to happen, but I remember saying something along the lines of, hey, Miller? Question mark? And pretty much moving on from that topic. So, what else do we have for spoilers? Well, we have Bobby. We have the beginning, okay? First we have the beginning. Dr. Strickland. I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then the girls showed May a monster. And that was the end of the prologue. That was it. Or chapter 1. Was that the prologue or chapter 1? I think that's the prologue. And that was it. That was like our bait for the book. And the entire time, I'll be honest, I thought we were not going to find May. I thought we were going to have something like the first book where we're hoping to find May, and then we don't. But I was wrong, and we did find May. And I was very confused when we did find May, because Dr. Strickland was like, no, I'm the good guy, I saved her. And the entire time I was like, this is pretty sus. This is pretty sus. This is pretty sus. I think this is sus. And it was sus, and Amos decided to just flat out shotgun him. Which honestly, yeah. Pretty much yeah. Now, there's also that moment, similarly to deciding to shotgun Dr. Strickland, that Holden has his moment where he's facing Mugen. Again, I don't know how to pronounce any of these names, I'm so sorry. But that guy, that certain admiral guy, who is on the falling ship, and he just has a moment where he's like, you're dead, and shoots him. And if you know, there's this entire plotline in this book, which I'm going to get into a complaint about this, but entire plotline in this book about Naomi being like, you're too much like Miller. Which, fair. And then he has that moment where he just shoots that guy in the head, and you're just like, is Naomi going to be upset about that one, or is she going to, like, understand that one? And she was understanding that one. But it's going to be very interesting to see if that, like, conflict keeps coming up where Holden is starting to lose track of where he is. Now, there is that reset earlier in this book where he's fired, and then he feels like everything's made right again. And it's interesting to see how Holden thinks. I think since we're following his perspective, it's fascinating to see, like, how he's so sure of everything he does. And he has that self-righteousness that all of the characters acknowledge that he's self-righteous. But it's definitely interesting to see how his flaws are built into who he is, even in his narration. I mean, something that I see as a flaw, but maybe other people don't see it as a flaw. I think that it's fascinating to see how perspectives vary in this story, and you can just tell it's a different person talking from how people are talking, and I think that that's really well done. Something I want to note about that, similarly, is how Prax talks. Prax talks like a botanist for a lot of the book. And I mean, especially at the beginning, like, he's using all these, like, fancy words that I have no idea what they mean. And the way he understands and describes things is, like, related to how he studies. And he always makes these, like, metaphors or analyses compared to his work, and, like, gives, like, anecdotes about his work and compares the situation to that anecdote. It's very interesting to see how he builds that. And you notice later on that starts to fade a bit, but then it comes back at the end. And so it's very interesting, like, how he viewed the proto-molecule as, like a living plant, like something that works with how, like, nature is, like, evolving. And his unique perspective was, like, really helpful to the plot as a botanist. Or, not a botanist, but, you know, as a person with a doctorate in studying the things he did and growing soybeans. Very fascinating. And so I really liked his perspective and seeing how he analyzed that way. I can see how some people don't like the block paragraphs of those words. I can definitely get that, but it's also, it makes sense to who he is. And again, it has that clear, like, distinguished perspective between the different characters. You can hear them thinking differently. It's not the author's voice that's going through the characters. It's, like, the character thinking as the words you are reading. So I think that's very cool. So, really like that. And, oh, I think I was mentioning Bobby, wasn't I? That's what I was mentioning, Bobby. We're basically covering each perspective. We got Avasarla, we got Holden, we've got Prax, and we got Bobby. Jupiter's freaking pretty. I've been freaking out about space recently. And then the proto-molecule shows up, and it decides to have a human form, be immune to a bunch of bullets, be chasing a bunch of UN soldiers, terrify the shite out of Martian soldiers, kill all the Martian soldiers but one, launch the last one, like, way across, skidding on the ice, which is pretty freaking terrifying when you think about it, and then it gets nuked by a solar panel. If I remember correctly, which I may not remember correctly, but I'm pretty sure a solar panel or something like that dropped on it, and that was it. It went boom. Or the bomb went off inside of it. There were bombs inside of this thing. That was also a whole nother reveal. There are bombs inside this thing, and the people who put the bombs in were really stupid. And didn't think of the possibility that maybe you'd be smart enough to take the bombs out. And it is at that point in which you are freaking terrified at what you've done. Well, honestly, they should have been terrified of what they were doing way before that. This is giving me Last of Us vibes. Bear with me here. Not in how the zombies or whatever work, but, like, in the conflicts and ideas. Every time that someone thinks, oh, there's a solution, oh, there's something we can do with this to solve everything, there's also a conflict in, like, how it's done. Is it the right thing? And everyone in some way or another is against the zombies, but everyone is against each other. And that's exactly what this series has. Everybody is in some way or form against the proto-molecule except for Protogen, but, you know, there's sociopaths? Is it socio? So, that's the whole thing. And Mao is a money guy. I don't know. I don't understand that guy. I really don't. We don't understand his motives, which is kind of what Holden's perspective at the end is about in the final chapters. Like, everything this guy has done, was it worth it? Is the question Holden asks him. And the question we're asking ourselves is, like, how could he even have believed it was worth it? We don't know. We don't know. It's unfathomable. But it's very interesting to think about. Anyway, rewind you back. Oh man, I'm rambling. Like, this is true ramble. I'm sorry. Rewind back. It's really like all of humanity is against the Prodigy in some way, but humanity is also against itself to the point that it can't even begin to fathom going against Prodigy on a level in which they're not losing. What happens in Last of Us? Last of Us, you have all these different humans are against each other and trying to kill each other. You got the government, you've got all these groups that are absolutely terrible and do terrible things. You've got groups like the characters we follow, just out and about doing, like, trying to survive. And at that point, humanity isn't even trying to get rid of zombies. They're just trying to live. And I feel that's the direction this series is going, where it's trying to live with the proto-molecule. And it's not even a state of, like, trying to destroy it or stop it. It might not be able to be stopped at this point. And maybe that's what Miller's doing at the end. But we'll talk about that later. Another thing I want to bring up before I get into my complaints, because I said I would get into my complaints, is how last book Miller was able to talk to the proto-molecule because it was based in Julie. This book, that didn't happen because the proto-molecule was being based in children that don't have immune systems to kick this thing out. One wonders, first of all, why putting it in children is different from vomit zombies. What causes vomit zombies? And third of all, can you talk to the children still? Or are they gone? And also, since they are children, they seem to gain more intelligence than maybe the child had originally. Intelligence to get rid of a bomb. I don't think a child would maybe be knowledgeable enough to know that a bomb would kill it. So that's another fascinating thing, is like, how different is what is now made from what it originally was. Rest in peace. Don't know. No idea. Gotta keep reading to find out. But the proto-molecule is very insane in this series. And it's gotten very powerful, especially towards the end. There's that scene, oh my gosh, this is actually one of my favorite scenes in this book, I think, now that I reflect on it. There's that scene where Avasarala is just rewatching the clip of the entire ship just being dismantled piece by piece, just going outward. Can you imagine seeing that? Something I mentioned is that part of what makes me love books so much, and specifically the case I gave for this, was Captain's Fury. In Captain's Fury, there's this scene that I can see it like I'm in a movie. There's this scene that I feel like I'm there, and the way it's described, it's just perfect. That is this scene for this book, is me, like, reading Avasarala, watching the ship just, every single piece of that ship, down to its individual screws, just coming out, and just, like, drifting apart in space. That's insane. That's insane on so many levels. And being able to, like, imagine that and, like, just picture watching that happen is, like, insane. That's terrifying. That is terrifying on a fundamental level. One of the most terrifying things about proto-molecule is that physics seems to go out the window. Physics going out the window is something that's going to make every single scientist, and has been making every single scientist in the series, go, it's fascinating to see in terms of, like, how the story is developing, how the proto-molecule is developing, and imagining, like, humanity at that point seeing stuff like that happen. That has to be, like, an insane feeling. I can't even imagine it. Like, we're reading the story in their perspective. I can't even begin to have the empathy to imagine what I would feel like in those final moments where everyone looks at the screen and sees the like Venus tentacle come out and just blow ships across space. I can't even begin to fathom what I would think. Like, I would probably just freeze. And I don't want to make the analogy, so I'm not going to, but there's an event that happened not in my lifetime, but in my parents' lifetime that everyone talks about, everyone in the US talks about, like, they knew where they were at that moment. You probably know what I'm talking about. And I wonder if it's like that in this case, but it's also for all of humanity. Everyone's watching this happen, and they're just, like, frozen. It's like, this is happening. And we don't even have any human instinct to, like, defend ourselves, because what are we gonna do? Like, everything just freezes, and you're just watching this happen. And as Holden put it, it's like, that just happened. And Naomi's asking, like, can you do anything about it? Or will you go to bed? Can you do anything about it? Will you go to bed? He doesn't answer, because he doesn't think he can do anything about it. But he also feels that he can't just go to bed after you see something like that. And very significant. It's like really very, very significant. And again, like, this has a lot of themes on humanity in its own way. And I'm not going to get into, like, themes because I don't really understand them. But really, like, just thinking about that and thinking about the circumstances of what's happening in this series and how serious the plot is getting it's really deep, and it's part of what's really, like, really catching me into the books. It's like how intense all of this is. Even if I don't have my characters, the plot, the world building, the everything else is really just in depth. It's very deep. And yeah. Also, I want to point out this quote. This is the future the way it was supposed to be. I'm sorry, is the future supposed to murder all of humanity? I have to ask. Why is that the quote they used? Apparently the way the future is supposed to be is all of us having wars and fighting and killing, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people on a single ship. And also getting murdered by, like, a bacteria molecule that is not a bacteria molecule. We're just not going to question it. We're just going to set it aside. But every time I see the cover, I'm like, uh-huh. Yeah. We're not going to talk about it. All right. My complaint. And this is a very me complaint. It's the same complaint I make with plenty of other books. It happens every single time. And in this case, it might actually be a character flaw or just being realistic to people. And it's just realistic to people that I don't understand. And that's Naomi and Holden. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. You remember when they first got together in the first book? And it sounded very, like, it sounded very much like maybe they shouldn't be getting together. And then now Holden's saying that he's in love and he's interested in kids and all of those things. And the entire time I'm just like, are you guys really? I don't see it. I don't understand it, especially the way, like, Naomi reacts and interacts with him. It seems like Holden's the kind of guy who always goes way too fast. And I wonder if it's, like, supposed to be genuine, if the authors are trying to write something that's supposed to be like, this is actually love, or if we're supposed to be, like, doubting it and being like, is this actually genuine, like I am being. I don't know what the intention of that relationship is, but every single time those scenes come up, every single time Holden brings up new things, I'm just like, you are going really fast, and it's weird to me. Part of me wonders if it's like that relationship that Wow, I can't remember either of those characters' names. Never mind. I can't remember their names. I'm never going to remember those names. There are relationships in TV and movies and books that I see where it is like that very cliche, like love at first sight, or like love, like them telling themselves they're in love kind of thing. And it's actually meant to be that questioning. That was all I was going to say. It was like, I really genuinely wonder if that's what's happening or not. I have no idea. These are not things I'm going to be able to understand. Especially since I'm Demi, I'm very, very much based in knowing a person. And, like, even after knowing a person, even if I was in a relationship, I feel it would also be a very long time before I'd even, like, interact the way that Holden does. It seems that he's very based around his attitude. Again, he's a character with his flaws written into him on a level where you just know it's there, and you don't dislike him for it. You're just noticing them all the time. Like, he is a human being. And that's what you see when you're reading it. Which is really a good thing. So, I don't know, some of those scenes seem very weird to me. Some of them I'm just like, I'm just going to skip a page. I skipped a page once because it was not something I needed to read. I'm that kind of person. Well, I'm that kind of person in particular times. It really depends, but not my thing. I just don't get it. One of my friends is going to read this series eventually, and I'm going to ask him what his opinion is, because he half gets my perspective, and he half is like a lot more understanding of these things than me. So I think it would be interesting to get his take on that. But yeah. That plot turn, there's also that really, really dark plot turn where, is it Nicola comes out and does like a what's the word? Like a slander news statement kind of thing, like libel slander, whichever the two it is, towards Prax. And there's that moment where Amos is like, is it true? And it definitely takes a very specific kind of person to say it. It should be said, it should be asked. But it definitely takes a very particular kind of person to ask it. And it takes a very particular kind of strength for Prax to be able to get through that question. And it really shows a lot of Prax's resolve that he answered that genuinely and just felt nothing. Like, the amount of stuff Prax has been through this series, through the single book, he wasn't even in the last book. The amount of stuff he's been through in this single book shows just how deep and, like, complex he is as a person. Because, as Holden put it, he just is the kind of person where he gets knocked down and he just gets up, moves on, gets up, moves on, gets up, moves on. He always looks at what is the next thing. And that's what helped him survive on Ganymede for so long. So, he's also a very interesting character, and I love seeing how his resolve is built in. And towards the end, he has that moment where it's just kid, taking care of kid, and now he has the kid again, which I'm very glad that May was still alive. But yeah, that was definitely a very intense moment. Some very tiny detail, but I also want to mention it because I love this detail too. There's that scene where, like, a piece of ship, like, comes flying through the ship by Prax, and he's not even, like, having a breakdown about it. It's just, like, he was this close to death, and all he can do is just be like, I think I soiled myself, and that is it. That really says something about the state he was in at that time. So, it's interesting to see how he'll recover. Speaking of recovering, end of this book, this is my last thing, end of this book, everyone's talking about, like, separating, like, going apart for a bit, or, like, doing their own thing. And then the protomolecule thing happens with Venus, and just goes, and then Miller shows up. And then that's the end of the book. Are they really going to separate? Are they really going to go do those things? Or is more plot about to, like, pick up right there? We shall see. Will it be a month later when the next book starts? Or will it take up place right after this one? I really want to know. But before then, I have different books I need to read. That is the end of spoilers. I have to reread Mistborn Era 1, and I'm hoping to do it by next week, but yesterday was the anniversary review of Mistborn Era 1, and I feel really, really guilty for totally forgetting until yesterday. So, I've started Mistborn 1. I am very much not far, but I started it, and it should go quickly. Mistborn 1, like, the Final Empire should go quickly. I don't have Well of Ascension with me right now, so goal number 1 is find where Well of Ascension is. And goal number 2 is read it. That book will probably go the slowest of the 3, and also maybe the beginning of Hero of Ages will go slow for me, but the end, I'm going to be speeding through the end of Hero of Ages all day long. From that certain scene, my only hint is Trapdoor. From Trapdoor to the end, I'm going to be speeding, so, you know. But at least the Final Empire will go by very quickly. I estimate a week. Since it is a reread, it should go a lot faster, but it may take longer than a week. But I'm hoping for about a week. We'll see. And after that is done, Abaddon. Is that how you say it? Abaddon? Abaddon's Gate? I don't know how to say any of these things, and I really need like a pronunciation guide for The Expanse. I will say, Caliban was starting to convince me to watch the TV show. Because if the TV show has that scene where the ship does the thing, I want to watch the TV show. If it has that scene, I will watch it. When the ship does the thing? When the ship does the thing. So I might, but we have Abaddon's Gate next. There is an 18-week wait for this audiobook. An 18-week wait. That's insane. That's like a lot of weeks for this audiobook. So a lot of people are listening to this right now. For my local library, let alone other libraries. A lot of people are listening to this book right now. So this is probably a really big deal, and I am very excited to get into it. And I do own the 4th book over there, which I want to say it's like Cibola Vern. But again, I may be mispronouncing that. I'll probably buy book 5. I am very much dedicated to this series, so I'll probably collect all of them. But for now, I don't have any new books on the way. We'll look into getting book 5 as soon as I begin book 3. Which hopefully is in a little bit over a week, if everything goes well. The last thing I want to mention is my future reading plan. And it's not often that I talk about my future reading plan, but here's the thing. We got time limits. We got a lot of time limits. And when we look at this bookshelf, there are 7 books in particular I need to finish soon. There's a problem with that, and the problem is that I'm in the middle of a series. And so I've been trying to map out the next few months and figure out like if it is even physically possible for me to finish all the books I need to finish by the end of the year. And I've been toying with 2 ideas, and I just want to say these ideas out, like throw these ideas out there for you guys to know what I'm thinking about, and we'll see which path I end up going on. But I was thinking about in the middle of The Expanse, when I hit book 4 of The Expanse and finish book 4 of The Expanse, when I finish Cibola Burn, of beginning Warbreaker / Way of Kings. It's probably not a good idea. It's probably an absolutely terrible idea. It is fantasy, so it is a break from The Expanse. However, here's the thing about Way of Kings. It's freaking big. Stormlight Archive is freaking big. I have them in parts. I have part 1 and part 2 of Way of Kings. I can maybe read part 1 of Way of Kings. But I ask myself, can I stop in the middle of a book? Can I stop after part 1 and not read part 2 right after? Probably not. I want to read both at once. But that's a freaking big book, and that is very scary, and that is getting into this thing that I don't know if I'm personally prepared for, but it's something I need to read before next year. And so, terrible idea? Start reading one of the biggest series I've ever read in my life in the middle of a sci-fi series? Probably not a good idea, but a lot of people say they go by quick. I don't know. So, that is possibility number 1. In the middle of this series, diving into that monster called Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. It's probably a very stupid idea. Idea number 2, which is more reasonable and it actually helps me make my book goal for this year, is after Cibola Burn to read the first 2 Discworld books I got, which are very tiny books and are comedy and are like a complete getaway from everything I've read for the last several years. They're very small, they go by very quick, and they will really take away from this. I think that would be beneficial, but it also postpones reading Stormlight Archive. And so it's really deciding if I truly do need a break after book 4, if I truly need a break from everything and not pick up freaking huge books, or if I think that I should just go for it. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. But Way of Kings may be on its way, and I honestly am terrified. I'm excited, but I'm terrified. That's all I have for this video. I highly recommend The Expanse. I'm only 2 books out of 9? 9! 2 out of 9. I'm only on starting book 3 out of 9, but just the first 2 books are fantastic. Fantastic. And I'm sure all the others are going to be great too. So, I definitely recommend the series so far. And I'm excited to continue it. I'll hopefully see you all next week. Hopefully. Bye-bye.